All right, so let's dive into this 8A certification. Aiming for a piece of that federal contracting pie. We're talking serious money here. Billions set aside for small businesses. You know, the disadvantaged ones like yours. And today we're going deep, beyond the 8A basics, to unpack some really smart strategies. From Reena Bhatia, she's the CEO of Proposal Helper and Bid Exec. She's got tons of experience,
Yeah.
helping businesses figure out this whole federal contracting thing.
What really strikes me about Bhatia's approach
Yeah.
is that she's very straightforward. She doesn't try to downplay the challenges, especially the temptation to just rely on those set-asides. But she also lays out a plan for building a business that can really thrive, not just within the program, but beyond it as well.
Okay, so let's break down this plan. She calls it a dual-focused growth strategy. What does that actually mean?
It means you can't just coast on your 8 status. You definitely need to use it to get those set-aside contracts, of course. But at the same time, you need to be focused, like laser focused, on developing what she calls core capabilities. Think of it this way. What makes your business stand out? What's your unique value proposition? What do you bring to the table that goes beyond just meeting the minimum requirements?
So it's not just about checking boxes, it's about building a business that can stand on its own 2 feet, even after you graduate from the program. But let's be real, a lot of 8 firms are understandably focused on those first few contracts. How do you balance that immediate need with this long-term vision?
Bhatia argues that you need to have an exit strategy from day one. The 8A program only lasts 9 years. If you haven't built a sustainable business model by then, you're going to be in trouble. That's why she recommends that. By year 5, 30 to 50% of your contracts should be non-8A.
Wow, that's ambitious. But I see how that pushes you to develop those core capabilities, become more competitive in the open market. So, in practical terms, what are some examples of these core capabilities? Does it vary depending on the industry?
Absolutely. Let's say you're in IT. Your core capability could be cybersecurity, specifically for government agencies. Or maybe you're in construction. You specialize in sustainable building practices, aligned with those federal mandates. The point is to figure out what sets you apart, what gives you that edge, even when you're not competing for set-aside contracts.
Makes sense. But wouldn't focusing on non-8A work early on take away from your efforts to win those initial set-aside contracts? I mean, resources are limited, especially for small businesses. How do you juggle those competing priorities?
That's where strategic partnerships become crucial. Bhatia is a big advocate for teaming arrangements, both with bigger government contractors and with other A firms. By partnering with established players, you get access to resources, mentorship, even prime contract opportunities that you wouldn't get otherwise.
So it's about leveraging the strength of the 8A community to create a win-win for everyone. I like that. But let's be honest, sometimes those relationships can be tough. How do you make sure that you're not just being used as a subcontractor with limited control and profit margins?
That's a legitimate concern. Bhatia emphasizes choosing your partners carefully and negotiating agreements that benefit both sides. It's about building relationships based on trust and shared goals, not just short-term gains. And this is where her advice about engaging with graduating 8A firms becomes really interesting.
Now that you mention it, she does seem to really like that strategy. Why is that?
Well, think about it. These companies are leaving the program, which means they're potentially leaving contracts behind. They've already built relationships with government agencies. They have a proven track record. If you can position yourself as a reliable partner, you can step right into those existing roles.
It's almost like succession planning, but for businesses. But she doesn't just recommend connecting with these firms when they're about to graduate, right?
No, and this is where it gets strategic. Bhatia suggests reaching out 3 to 5 years before they graduate. This gives you plenty of time to build that relationship, learn from their experience, and maybe even collaborate on joint ventures while they're still in the program.
So it's a long game, but the payoff could be huge. You're setting the stage for a smooth transition of both contracts and expertise. But what about the money? Bhatia mentions financial planning, but doesn't go into too much detail.
She's right to highlight that. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of winning contracts. But if you're not managing your finances well, you're setting yourself up to fail. Bhatia emphasizes the need for a solid financial plan, one that takes into account the unique challenges of federal contracting, like those longer payment cycles and fluctuating revenue streams.
This is where having a good accountant comes in.
Or
Or a financial advisor who understands government contracting.
absolutely. They can help you navigate the complex regulations, manage your cash flow effectively, and make sure you're maximizing your profits. And here's something interesting Bhatia pointed out. A lot of government buyers, even experienced ones, aren't always up to speed on the rules for sole source awards within the 8A program.
Really? So you're saying we can use that to our advantage?
Exactly. Bhatia suggests educating buyers about these regulations, specifically 13 CFR 124, which outlines the criteria for sole source contracts. By becoming a resource for those buyers, you might open doors to opportunities that others miss.
That's a great idea. It's not just about playing the game, it's about shaping the rules. But how do you do that without being pushy or trying to manipulate the system?
It's all about framing it as helpful. Bhatia recommends using sources sought responses strategically.
Can you remind me what those are again?
Sure, they're basically a way for government agencies to gather information from potential vendors before they officially issue solicitation. Bhatia suggests using these responses to subtly educate agencies about your unique capabilities and how they fit the criteria for sole source awards.
So it's like planting a seed, subtly influencing the requirements to make your business the obvious voice.
Exactly. It's about being proactive and strategic, not just waiting around for opportunities.
I'm starting to see why Bhatia is so successful. She's always thinking ahead. But this all sounds like a lot to handle, especially for a small business owner who's already juggling a million things.
It can be overwhelming for sure, but Bhatia emphasizes that you don't have to go it alone. She strongly recommends working with experienced consultants or firms like Proposal Helper, who can guide you through the whole process, from writing proposals to negotiating contracts. They can help you create a strategy that fits your goals and maximizes your chances of success.
It's like having a guide leading you up a mountain. Makes sense. We've covered a lot in this first part of our deep dive into Bhatia's 8A strategies. We've talked about the dual-focused growth strategy, the importance of strategic partnerships, and how to educate government buyers. But there's one more thing she really emphasizes: building a strong network within the 8A community.
The human element. It's not just about regulations and contracts. It's about connecting with other 80 business owners who are going through the same things you are. Bhatia sees this sense of community as one of the most valuable parts of the program.
Welcome back to our deep dive into 8A strategies with Reena Bhatia. We've been talking about her approach to not just surviving, but thriving in the world of federal contracting. Before the break, we were discussing strategic partnerships. But I want to explore this idea of the 8A community as a resource. What did Bhatia have to say about that?
Bhatia is really clear about this. The 8A program isn't just about individual businesses competing. It's about entrepreneurs supporting each other, sharing knowledge, and celebrating success. It's an ecosystem where collaboration can really boost growth for everyone involved.
That's a great perspective. It's easy to get caught up in the competition, but I can see how a sense of community could benefit everyone. But how does that work in practice? How can 8A firms actually connect and collaborate?
Bhatia says you have to actively look for opportunities to engage with other 8A business owners. Go to industry events, join relevant associations, even just reach out directly to companies you admire.
Like a mastermind group. But specifically for 8A firms, I bet there's so much knowledge and experience to share.
Absolutely. And it's not just about best practices or navigating the red tape. It's also about emotional support. Running a business can be lonely, especially in federal contracting. Having people who understand your challenges is invaluable.
A built-in support system, people you can turn to for advice, encouragement, or just to vent. But are there more formal ways for 8A firms to collaborate?
Bhatia highlights the SBA's Mentor-Protege program. This program pairs experienced companies with emerging 8A firms. It provides a framework for knowledge transfer, mentorship, and even joint ventures.
I've heard great things about that program. It seems like a win-win. The mentor gives back and maybe finds a reliable subcontractor. The protege gets guidance and resources.
Exactly. And it's not just about technical skills or business stuff. It's also about learning the unwritten rules of federal contracting. Having a mentor can save you a lot of trouble.
Like a guide leading you through a jungle. But let's say you're not ready for a formal mentorship program. Are there other ways to learn from more established 8A firms?
Bhatia goes back to her point about graduating 8A firms. These companies have been through the whole program. They probably have strong relationships with agencies, and they might be looking for partners to take over contracts.
See, it's like an apprenticeship. You learn from someone who's been there. But what about competition? Wouldn't those firms see you as a threat?
It's a fair point. But Bhatia says you need to frame it as collaboration, not competition. Don't try to steal their contracts. Approach them with a desire to learn and support them.
So find areas where you can work together, instead of trying to do the same thing.
Exactly. Maybe you have expertise they need. Or you can provide support services so they can focus on their core work. By being an asset, not a competitor, You build trust and create opportunities.
Makes sense. It's about creating a win-win. But even with the best intentions, leaving the 8A program can be scary. What advice does Bhatia have for a smooth transition?
Bhatia stresses the importance of starting early, ideally by year 7. 8A firms should be stable enough to support their own proteges, and maybe even subcontract to newer firms.
Paying it forward, you become the mentor while preparing for your own graduation.
Exactly. And in those final years, Bhatia says companies should actively pursue unrestricted contracts. This shows you can compete on your own and reassures agencies that you're a viable partner, even without the 8A designation.
Proving you're not just relying on set-asides, you can win on merit.
Exactly. It all comes back to Bhatia's point about core capabilities. By the time you graduate, those capabilities should be so strong, you don't even need the preferential treatment anymore.
Like you've climbed the mountain, and now you can fly on your own.
Great analogy. And speaking of flying, Bhatia has some interesting ideas about sole source awards.
Intriguing. We touched on this before. But let's dive deeper. What does she recommend?
Bhatia noticed that many government buyers, even those who work with 8A firms a lot, don't always understand the rules about sole source awards. She sees this as an opportunity.
So educate those buyers, become a resource.
Exactly. She says to use sources sought responses strategically to inform agencies about your capabilities and how they fit the criteria for sole source awards, like planting a seed,
Yeah,
gently guiding them towards a solution that works for everyone.
brilliant. It's not about manipulating the system. It's about making sure everyone understands the rules and maximizing the potential of the 8A program.
Exactly.
Yes.
And she even gives a specific reference, 13 CFR 124. This outlines the rules for sole source awards to 8A firms. Having that knowledge can be really helpful.
It's like a secret weapon, but really it's just being informed. But all of this takes confidence and expertise. How can 8A firms develop those qualities, especially if they're new to this?
That's where Bhatia's advice about mentorship and collaboration comes in. Surround yourself with people who have experience, learn from their mistakes, adopt their best practices, and you'll gain the confidence you need to succeed.
So find the right mentors and collaborators to help you along the way.
Exactly. And as we move to the final part of our deep dive, it's important to remember Bhatia's main message. She wants 8A firms to see this program as a launch pad, not a crutch.
Use those 9 years to build a business that can stand on its own.
And we'll explore that final stage when we return.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Reena Bhatia's strategies for 8A success. We've really explored a lot. Her dual-focused growth strategy, the power of educating government buyers. But what really resonates with me is Bhatia's vision for the 8A program. It's more than just rules and regulations.
It's that community aspect she keeps talking about. It's like she's saying, don't just play the game, join the team. That's powerful, especially for businesses that might feel a little lost.
We've talked about networking and mentorship, but there's something deeper here, right? It's like a shared journey.
Exactly. Bhatia talks about the legacy of the 8A program. It's not just about getting contracts. It's about building businesses that create jobs, contribute to the economy, and ultimately empower communities.
Like a ripple effect. Each successful 8A firm inspires others.
That's why Bhatia's focus on sustainability is so important. It's not enough to just coast for 9 years. She wants these businesses to be pillars of their communities, thriving long after they graduate.
So it's about building legacies. But how do you turn that vision into action? What can 8A firms do to ensure long-term success?
Bhatia has a really practical tool for that, her 9-year roadmap checklist. It outlines actions to take at each stage of the 8A journey to build a foundation for growth.
Can you give us a preview of those milestones?
Sure. In the early years, you focus on core capabilities, getting those first contracts and getting your finances in order. As you move forward, you start diversifying your revenue, getting non-8 contracts and building those partnerships.
So a gradual but deliberate move towards independence.
Right. And by year 7, Bhatia says firms should be stable enough to support their own proteges, contributing to the 8A community.
The rising tide lifts all boats. And in those final years, you really focus on showing you can compete in the open market.
Exactly. Bhatia wants these businesses to leave the program strong, knowing they've built something special, something that can stand on its own.
Like a graduation ceremony. But instead of diploma, you have a thriving business, a network of relationships, and a legacy that goes beyond those 9 years.
And that's what makes Bhatia's perspective so valuable. She's not just giving advice. She's giving a blueprint for building a business that matters.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing Reena Bhatia would want us to remember?
I think she'd say, don't just see the 8A program as a stepping stone. See it as a launch pad to build a business with purpose and impact.
Embrace the challenges, use the resources, build those relationships, and never stop learning.
And remember, you're not alone. There's a whole community of 8A businesses ready to support you.
So go out there, make the most of this opportunity, and let's build a brighter future together. Until next time.